Hello and welcome back to SkipCinematic's IndieWhat. This is Keenan bringing you the information you need to know about the games in the indie genre. This time we'll be looking into the game Yesterday from Pendulo Studios. Yesterday is available for PC and iOS for $14.99 on Steam and is classified as an action game. In truth, Yesterday is a point-click adventure comparable to the old classic Myst for those who remember. Throughout the entirety of the game, a player is placed in different environments and is required to solve a small piece of the story before continuing on to the next setting. However, if you have played many games of this genre, you'll know that the puzzles are not always straightforward or in some cases logical. This usually leads to being stuck in the same area for an extended amount of time or simply giving up. Yesterday counters this dead zone and mentality in two ways. First of which is a button that can be used any amount of times that will show a player what can be interacted with in each area. This saves valuable time and prevents the habit of just clicking all over the screen or on random scenery in hopes of finding something. The second feature is the hint button. Hints are not always written out in black and white and sometimes still consider some thought. The downside is this feature cannot be used over and over. To continue to receive hints, a number of attempts to solve it on your own is necessary. But if you haven't made any progress from the last time you used a hint, generally the hint remains the same. In this sense, it makes the experience more enjoyable, but it doesn't walk a player through the game. Yesterday opens with a prologue where you play from the perspective of Henry White, who is a member of a charity society. During the opening scene, it appears that Henry White is investigating the disappearance of the homeless and searching for a man who is performing ritual sacrifices with these people. However, after the semi-brief opening scene, the rest of the game is played as John Yesterday. John is a man who has lost all memory of who he was and is set on a discovery of his past. In this search, he is simultaneously investigating information on a satanic cult for his employer. As this is a mystery story, you can expect that not everything is cut and dry. There are a fair amount of twists and conspiracy involved in Yesterday. However, I must say there are some included scenes that, although interesting, really do not contribute to the plot. Though these scenes are few, overall it felt like there wasn't much point in them being there other than for extending the game time. In general, the story of Yesterday is interesting enough. However, from watching the trailer, I was under a bit of a different impression of what the experience would be like. I was compelled by the story of John and recovering his memory, but I thought that it would have been more modern and revolve around finding out who he was. Though it's surprising when you find out, it still seemed a little lackluster from my expectations. The game focused more on uncovering the secrets of the satanic cult, and the climax revolved around conspiracy. And that conspiracy left me with the feeling it was a bit shallow. I enjoyed the tale, but overall I wanted something more and bigger. The major fact of Yesterday is that it's more focused around telling a narrative rather than being an actual immersive game. I found at times I would fall impatient with what I was experiencing. The gameplay doesn't change from the first moment you start a new file, and you simply move from scene to scene, continuing to solve a puzzle. Although Pendulo Studios had a compelling idea, the execution could have been a bit more solid. Given a solid mix of the adventure and narrative style, and perhaps throwing in a short action segment here and there, would have gotten me more involved. A big focus for a game about narrative and telling a story is the script and the interactions with the different characters. In this sense, many of the lines for the characters were a bit cheesy and cliche. Through the game's own script, nothing was especially mind-blowing, and it doesn't leave me with much to brag about. Some of the characters themselves are very unoriginal, and none of the roles are really new or contain a large amount of depth. Even with stumbling around and trying to figure out the puzzles out the first time, Yesterday was still only a short 4 hours, and many more subjects and people could have been developed on. For someone who solved every puzzle without a hitch would have only experienced about 2 hours of gameplay. So, overall, Yesterday was a compelling game, but it isn't Pendulo Studios' first, and it could have been extended on as well as polished up. The graphics themselves are in a style you don't see much of and is somewhat cartoony, but it's rendered very well. Gameplay itself is a bit repetitive, frustrating, and sometimes clunky. Though time is never a problem, some of the responsiveness to interacting with different objects was sluggish. This brings me to the story is probably best stated as mediocre plus. With the thrown in extra segments and the lack of complexity of the main story, some of the points are confusing. Although you do get to decide between one of 3 endings, replayability is low if not none, especially since you can reboot your save to see all 3 endings. This leads me to give yesterday a 2 out of 5. It really just feels like the game fell a bit short of what the aim was. As everything is a puzzle to be solved, some solutions simply did not make sense. With a little more development of characters and plot, yesterday could have been much more fascinating. Sadly, I can't say it's really worth the $15 to experience. Yet again, thanks for watching this episode of IndieWhat. Catch me next time where I will review Xenoclash 2 from Ace Team and published by Atlas. This has been Keenan with SkipCinematic saying it's been real, and I'm out.